Mr. Benton.
I'd first like to say thank you to Lane and our council members for your vision and the recognition of how important parks are to a community, and they are to our citizens. And Van Alstyne is very fortunate to have the parks that we have. Special thank you to Tyler and his group. Tyler, of course, was recognized as our Director of Parks. They do a great job of maintaining the parks in Van Alstyne. When communities are evaluated for excellence, it revolves around what is known typically as quality of life issues. And right at the top of those quality of life issues are your schools and your parks. People look for your school quality, they look for your parks, your way of life. How does that contribute to their quality of life? And I will tell you that Van Alstyne is very fortunate because we excel in both of those areas. Great park system, growing park system, and great schools. I thought I'd give you a little history about kind of the pioneers as you come down through and connect Eula and Robert to those that came before them. Really, the original pioneers in the family on my grandmother's side were J.P. and Mary Ann Dumas. J.P. came from South Carolina. He was a surveyor by trade, and he ended up on the banks of the Trinity River in Dallas as the third house, cabin, built alongside John Neely Bryant. Now, being a surveyor by trade, Bryant put him to work, and he surveyed out the original lots of downtown Dallas. Bryant paid him in those lots, paid him for his services with lots. In those days, you would have had to ridden to Nacogdoches, Texas, to record the deeds of ownership. Dumas, having fallen in love with this area as he came through it to go to Dallas, knew that he would probably come back this way and decided not to go record the deeds to those lots, which in fact today those lots are where the school book depository and the grassy knoll is in Dallas. Mrs. Dumas was interviewed in the late 1800s by the Dallas Morning News, and Dallas certainly had grown by that time and become a major thriving metropolis in Texas. And she made the comment that perhaps JP should have really rethought that about recording the deeds to those lots. But in her salutation to that interview, she made an interesting comment that I think still stands the same today. And she says, if you decide to come to Grayson County, Texas, on the banks of the Sister Grove Creek, you will receive a hearty welcome at Sister Grove Farms, where we still have our latch keys on the outside of our doors. So Mary and JP moved back to near Cannon, about 6 miles east of Van Alstyne, where in fact the Dumas Cemetery off of Wolfront Road exists today. And their gravesides, their family graves are there. It's a beautiful cemetery, kind of tucked back in there. You have to know where it is to find it. But they had a daughter named Texana. And Texana was reported to be the first immigrant child born in Grayson County. She was born in January of 1846. And so they lived and resided out there. We'll let that one go. Texana married Reese Cannon. Reese Cannon was the son of Elijah Cannon, for whom the community of Cannon was named. So a very active group, early settlers of that area. Reese and Texana had 2 daughters. They had Eula Cannon, who married John Umphress. And John was one of the founding directors of the First National Bank of Van Alstyne. He was president of that bank for decades. And, of course, that bank today is Cadence Bank. And Eula and John had two children. One was Helen Umphress, the other Carl Umphress, for whom the street is named in Van Alstyne. But Helen married Henry Hynds, and so I'm kind of stepping you forward to get to Robert. Henry was mayor of Van Alstyne, very active, loved his community. Taught us all the importance of public service. And his love for Van Alstyne, I assure you, is in the hearts of all of my cousins and my kids, because it is a great, wonderful community. I'll tell you a couple other things about during my granddad's tenure on the city council. The WPA project was announced by the federal government to help with what had just been a very difficult time through the Depression. And so the lady that was Gus Thomason was the administrator of those funds. There was actually $4.9 billion, if you think about that, in the 1930s and 40s. But $4.9 billion, about $15 per citizen of the U.S. So a lot of money. But anyway, the secretary, Gus Thomason, was actually a Van Alstyne resident. So it goes back to who you know. And my grandfather said that they went to Gus Thomason's office to ask for their projects. And he said there was a line down the street 2 blocks long. And they were ushered in the back door into Gus Thomason's office. And Gus Thomason gave them all their projects. Of those projects were some that you would recognize. That's why there's concrete streets downtown in the city of Van Alstyne, a WPA project. That's why the gymnasium that the council has been so forward-thinking and remodeling and bringing back to life, that gymnasium was built with WPA funds. And also a school for the African-American children in Van Alstyne, which is now Samaria Baptist Church by East Park. That also was built with WPA funds. Helen and Henry had 3 children, John Hynds, Robert Hynds, and Jane Hynds Benton Robertson. The property was passed down from John and Eula Umphress to Henry and Helen, and then to Robert. And a couple of years ago, as you know, Robert so generously donated this property to the city. On this property, as Kathy mentioned, it was farmland for over 150 years, and our lifetime has never been anything but. Early days, cotton was raised here and was really the king of Van Alstyne. There were 5 cotton gins in our area. A day gone by, obviously, and then in later years, wheat, as Kathy talked about, oats and milo were the major crops raised on this property. In the 1970s, probably not too far from where we sit and stand today, Gulf Oil decided that there was oil under Van Alstyne. And they leased a lot of the land out from under all the homes, oil leased, in Van Alstyne, set up a rig on this very site, and for months sat here drilling. Ended up on the wrong side of the fault, pulled the rig, went down on the other side. They still had a dry hole, much to the chagrin of all of the community members who had leased their land and were thinking they might get an oil check one day. With us today are several family members, and I'm going to miss some, I fear, but I'm going to make an attempt. Robert's daughter-in-law, Linda Hynds, is with us, and her granddaughters, Melanie Jones's daughters, Hillary, Heather, and Alex. The daughters of John Hynds, Sarah Thorne, Kathy Thorne, Barbie Johnson, Jennifer Gorman, and Marnie Norris. And the grandchildren, Chelsea, Holly, Amber, and Natalie, are here. My mother, Jane Hynds, and my sister, Kay, and my kids, Paula's, Henry and James, and Stacia Foyer. Stacia was Robert's niece, was Eulene's sister's daughter. And so we are very privileged to be here and enjoy today and all the work that's gone into this. I would just close and say that Robert and Eula would be very proud to know that for generations to come, families, friends will gather on this property and create new memories, and will enjoy certainly this wonderful park. May God bless this park, and may it be a source of great joy for those who visit. So Lane had asked me about the bell that is up on the upper level. And so a little history about that. That bell actually was in Robert's backyard, and the park would be no better of a place for that bell. And where it came from is the Samaria Baptist Church originally had that bell in its steeple. And that church was on Wilson Street and 121, where they're doing some excavation today, and I think are going to build a house. But that's where the original church stood, and that bell was in its steeple. And when they tore the church down and then moved over to where they are now, Robert became the owner of that bell. And so we felt like it would be a great place to be in the park, and kids could listen to that bell as they ring it and think about the days that it stood in that steeple. There was a gentleman, Mr. Orr, who I talked to, who was paid $1 a month to ring the bell on Sundays and Wednesday. And that he liked that job. But that was his job, and he remembered it very clearly.